Yeah.
See, Jeff Porcaro, first of all, I always thought of him as my little brother.
Yeah.
He was 17 when I met him, and he was a phenomenon. He was ridiculous. You know, he played. That was at a time when Vinny wasn't quite Vinny yet.
Yeah.
But I had already heard Vinny, and I knew that Vinny was some kind of crazy force.
Yeah.
And then I heard Jeffrey play something that was very much like Vinny, and so I remember turning around and I said, "Hey, can you do that again?" And he did exactly. Like it wasn't an accident.
Yeah.
So I said, "Man, where did you get those kind of chops?" And I figured it was his dad, you know, the famous Joe Porcaro teacher. And he said, "Yeah, Joe showed me a few things, but I used to play on his drum set, you know, from the time I was so small that I couldn't reach the pedals."
Yeah.
So he had been doing it for a long time, and he got technique and chops that were ridiculous at a very young age. And then he said, when I complimented him, he said, "You know, my dad and all the Goombas, all the guys, you know, they all said to me, 'You play too fast, you play too busy, slow down.'"
Yeah.
And I told him, I can't say what I said here on camera, but I said, "Listen, you're 17 only one time in your life.
Yeah.
You go for it now, man.
Right.
You play as fast and as busy as you want to, because you got plenty of time to slow down."
Yeah.
A couple years later, less than that, he was on this incredible big hit record by Boz Scaggs, Low Down.
Low Down album. Yeah.
And it just showed,
The groove was
that
incredible.
the groove. There was nobody. You know, I just spoke about him a few minutes ago, and I was saying that to be so young and to be so bad with his pocket, his soulfulness, and his serious pocket. I hate to use that word over and over, but that his groove was so soulful, and he was such a young man. I always thought of him as an old soul. And I said, you know, to him many times, you know, you're an old man in a young kid's body. But he was a young man and was cut down at the age of 38. That's very young. That's way too young. So from the time he came on till 38, age of 38, he was, I will say, one of the best recording drummers I've ever heard in my life. He could do anything, and it was beautiful. I won't say it was perfect, but it was always beautiful what he did. His interpretation, he just was one of a kind. So, and I must say that people have always said that I was one of the biggest influences in his life, and I've straightened this out a few times, but I'll do it again. Musically, he would always try to emulate me, and I would always tell him, because when he'd show me what he'd done that he thought was like me, it wasn't it. And I would say, "Listen, you know what? Don't waste your time doing that." I said, "Don't listen to me, because it won't serve you well in playing on records later on and stuff. You know, what's going to serve you well is if you listen to Jim Gordon, listen to John Guerin."
Johnny.
I told him all these people to listen to, and then one of the last people I turned him on to was Bernard Purdie. I said, "Listen to this," and I played him a bunch of stuff, and he flipped out, just like you do when you hear Purdie for the first time.
He loved the shuffle too, man. He loved it.
And then from there, he took it from there, man, and there was nobody as good as Jeffrey. And Vinny and all the guys that got to know him personally will agree with that 100%.
And they loved him. We loved him. He really had that sense of aura that you couldn't help but love him. But I'll tell you something. He's smiling now, hearing the words from you. He's smiling now. Because,
he is.
Because he really believed in you, and he really trusted you, and he really looked up to you, and he really enjoyed his relationship with you. Cause
he loved me a lot. I know he did, and we had real great, serious personal talks, where I know, I can't say it on the camera, but I know what my biggest influences on him were, and they weren't musical. And we both were crazy at a time when it was very crazy time, and everybody was crazy. And I was an old crazy person, he was a young crazy person, but we were still crazy at that time. But even though we would have these really, really intense, good talks.
Yeah.
And so I know that I'm going to see Jeffrey again one of these days.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great.
And the times will be absolutely even better.
Yeah.
Even better.
It's going to be better.
Another guy that